over the years, I've done a number of mission consultancies advising churches on what they could be doing to be more effective in their outreach. I've helped different home mission grant churches maximize their impact. And obviously the principles of outreach, which I've been advocating there and we've been putting into practice in North Springfield, I've never actually articulated in the church. We've talked around them, I've assumed them. But this evening I thought I'd take a few moments to spell out what we could call Outreach 101, the very basics of principles of outreach in today's world. And the truth is, as we were saying this morning, most people outside church life are much further from Christian things than they were a generation ago. And the approaches which we used to use to outreach, like Billy Graham missions, like Alpha and Christianity Explored, used to assume a prior knowledge of Christian things, which are much less successful in the 21st century because people don't have those basics behind them. So I wanted this evening to put together the few basic insights to what effective outreach would look like today. Outreach 101, if you like. The first very important thing to say is that outreach involves two things. It involves both sharing the message of Jesus and making connection and building relationships with people. And we need, in these days, more of the second, more making connection, more building relationships than perhaps we used to in the days when everybody had been to church. Churches need more pre-evangelism events, activities, building relationships with the existing contacts on the fringe of the church, meeting new folk on their terms, on their turf. Some people call these crossing places where the church and the world intersect. Could be on church premises or a neutral ground like a school or a pub or a cafe or in the local park. When we're running these crossing places, we need to avoid any cringe factor. We need excellence. We need joined up planning so that we plan one event to follow on from the next, from the last. We meet people's needs where they are about and we make friends with them. But our outreach then will need events at different levels. And I think of 6 levels. Level 0, just we want people to know that the church exists, that it has activities, they know how to find us. We need activities level 1, which are purely social. And then level 2, social with a little bit of the Christian message in. Level 3, event where the focus is on the message. And level 4, where we could be talking about events and courses for inquirers, like baptism preparation, like Alpha Christianity Explored. And then ultimately we need level 5 events, which are follow-up for those who've made a commitment to faith. But most of our neighbours and friends won't be ready for something like a full-blown Alpha course. So we need events at other levels to begin to build relationships, to lead them to Christ. We've all got a part to play in outreach, and it's good for every member of the church to identify people that we're praying for, that we can give invitations to different events for. We should all be involved in those events as we take opportunities to share life with people, to share Jesus with them. A statement of the obvious: people will only come to events if we invite them. It's important to have good publicity materials, but then also to invite people personally, invite them first of all by telling them about the event and then sometime later asking if they're coming. But when we're putting events together, it's also important to identify who are our fringe, who are going to be the primary target. That our friends, our work colleagues, our neighbours, people who've attended services or other outreach events in the past, people who come on the premises for some reason, like toddlers or drop-in. Really a wider fringe, anybody who can walk to the church, maybe within 10 minutes. Nowadays, folk who we've made contact with online, But at the same time, we need to be sowing our contacts more widely, sowing the seeds, not just focusing on the folk we already know, but we also need some events and activities to bring the church to the attention of the wider public. So, Outreach 101, these basics that we need to think about. Let me just put them on the screen and remind you of what I've just said. These essentials, these basic principles. Outreach involves these two things: sharing the message of Jesus, but also making connections and building relationships, meeting people where they are. So we need activities, different levels. So I'm going to talk about these levels next. We've all got to play our part, and we start by praying for our friends. People only come to events if we've invited them. So we've got to identify who are we inviting, who are our fringe. And at the same time, how can we spread the gospel more widely than that? So let's think for a few minutes about what it means to have a level of awareness of the church and its community. The aim that everybody in our target community, which in North Springfield I would say is North Springfield, plus now all the new houses on Bewley, even going out to Channels, the places for whom we are the closest to church. We should be aiming that everybody in our target community knows the name of the church, where we are, the kinds of things we do. On the premises, that means we do need permanent signs, the name, the logo, the web address, and Rebecca's rightly said we must make sure that we have our current web address. www.northspringfieldbaptistchurch.org should be what's on our permanent signs. We put up special banners from time to time. We have Christian posters, advertising events, and so on. These are important things. Within the church, when folk come in, we've got internal notice boards. Some churches have rolling television there, literature racks. Letting people know we're there in the seasonal deliveries of Christmas and Easter leaflets, maybe sometimes at harvest as well. Inviting folk to particular events, putting notices in newsagents, shop windows, library, posters up in members' windows, handing out cards in the street, distributing through schools, other local groups, teaser campaigns, postcards, posters. Knocking on doors maybe will be something the church will consider again in the future. Praying for You, a project I'll talk about at the end. Increasingly now we can use email as well as postbox mail shots, and we've used Facebook paid advertising with good effect. But then we can raise our profile in articles in the local press, reports, photographs, adverts, paid advertising, local radio. We've got to have a web presence in today's world, the website, the blog, the Facebook, YouTube, texting people. And I believe it is good to give things away, like our seasonal cards, our Christmas cards. We've got some to give away, to deliver invitations. We've got our More of the Difference Jesus Makes testimony books. We can give away all sorts of things, Easter eggs, babysitting vouchers, giving away gifts with invitations. And I do believe a regular newsletter was helpful. It stopped because of COVID, but I think it would be good if the church were to start it, even on an occasional basis, what we used to have of Haven News, just something to read, sharing the Christian faith, which we share with our contacts, with our neighbours, with our friends. Level 0, making people aware of the church. I think that newsletter is important. We should be regularly sending things home to the fringe contacts, a church magazine, if you like, building up relationships, a sense of belonging. I think church magazines used to be cringe-worthy. I think something simpler is better. And then delivering things like cards. Folk now have very limited time to deliver cards and leaflets. I've only ordered 500 Christmas cards for this Christmas. But for future, the church could consider paying for bulk deliveries of cards, especially in areas where new homes are being built. We pay people to deliver. We've not been able to do that year on year. We've been spending more than we've been getting in. But now, when the church will not have a minister, it may well be a worthwhile use of the extra funds, ample funds for ambitious publicity projects. Level 1 tells people that the church is here. Level 0 tells the people the church are here. Level 1, purely social activities, building relationships with the parent toddler groups. If they're our target, evenings which parents come along to as well as children, film, DVDs, games, pizza, cookery, crafts, electric, so many possibilities, craft, art, drama, music. The Christmas craft afternoon is one of the things we've often done, and the family fun day in the summer. Drawing folk into charity and fundraising occasions. I had a phone call the other day on the church number. Are we doing Harvest for the Hungry this year? Are we doing shoeboxes? We're not, but we have done. May do again. Social events, outings, family fun days, it's a knockout. We've had our charity concert of North Springfield Has Talent. We certainly do have talent, but it can be something as simple as sing-along evenings, 60s evenings, 70s evenings, 80s evenings to sing along to. Quiz nights. And some churches have teams which they put into the local pub quizzes. Hobby evenings, gardening, craft, knitting, cookery, talks, hands-on workshops, parenting classes, advice-type talks maybe, meals with a message on the premises, or it could be at a restaurant, cafe or pub, music book club, exercise, fitness, dieting classes, ladies' lunch, a pamper evening for ladies, chocolate parties, tabletop sales. I'm going to say something about that in a minute. Hog roast in the church car park, social afternoons, all sorts of things we could do there. Things in the local pubs or cafes, drop-ins, not just on Friday afternoon, but maybe after school or at different occasions for senior citizens or for young mums. Barn dances, bring and share Sunday lunches at church, hospitality Sundays where members invite guests to their homes. Some churches have men's curry nights or Chinese evenings. Don't know why only the men get invited to those. Strawberry teas or Sunday of Sundays, just an ice cream fest on a Sunday afternoon. Or there's another idea that I'll say a bit more about in a moment, a Good Life Cafe. Explain more about that in a second. Some suggestions there. The idea is to just bombard you with all these possibilities. So you might think if there's anything that catches your eye, anything that you remember after all of this list that you might think was right for North Springfield. Events can be off-site in cafes, pubs, schools. And if we look at the makeup of the community around us, we may need to create new groups to reach particular sectors of the community. Many of the events that I've just talked about could be targeted specifically at couples without children, or at single folk, or at commuters. Different events can be adapted to the meet of folk who are only available during the day, or folk like the elderly, or single parents, or unemployed, or disabled, or discouraged folk. Different things we can find to build relationships with our community. Let's just look very briefly at the other possible levels. They'll be familiar to us. Things that we can do. Level 2, social activities which contain a little bit of a Christmas message, like at Christmas, carols by candlelight, carols and cake. Now that we've got another room on ground floor level in the building, we can do things which haven't been possible with the space we've had before, to have an epilogue or a spiritual element, a more substantial spiritual element at Toddler Group or at Haven Cafe. delivering the newsletter to the Fringe. I think Haven News is going to be important. And Good Life Cafe, I'll tell you what that means in a minute or so. Explain that as a particular idea of something we might consider doing. Level 3, where the message is the focus. We've had things like over the years, the speakers, Janie Lee Grace came, and Susie Fleshman Jarvis. Churches put on concerts, they put on dramas. They also run events like guest services, healing services. Grill the Vicar, where you release your minister to answer a question or particular subject. Praying for you, I'll talk about below. And Church on the High Street is a sort of catch-all for doing things in the open air, an outdoor service or something in the middle of town. Not so easy in North Springfield because we don't really have a local high street to be doing things in. But there's a place for evangelistic Bible studies. Alpha is quite heavyweight, but a pre-Alpha Inquirers course, something called the Y course is very basic for that. And visiting local homes. And the Praying for You cards, I'll talk about those. 3 ideas I'm throwing out, I'll explain more in a moment. Level 4, when it comes to courses for serious inquiries, Alpha, Christianity Explored, the Y course. We've run the Meet Jesus video course, which I've run based on Jesus of Nazareth. We watch a bit of the Jesus of Nazareth video and talk about it. Evangelistic Bible studies, baptism classes for those who are seriously inquiring about the Christian faith. And I also took the ladies who were inquiring through the topics in the first part of my book, Prepared to Give an Answer, the 11 questions which non-Christians often ask about the Christian faith. We talked through all of those. Level 5, what do we do when someone makes a commitment? Church membership course, house groups, of course, home groups, using the resources in my other book, Making Disciples One-to-One, finding ways to build folk up as disciples, level 5 events. An obvious observation. When a church has a minister, they usually leave it to the minister to run the level 4 events for serious inquirers, the level 5 events to follow up for new Christians. In the time between ministers, the deacons will need to take responsibility for finding things to do with those inquiring about the Christian faith and for follow-up if somebody's made a commitment. And I'd encourage us to bear in mind that those are not usually considered to be the tasks of a moderator. Those are very much things that the church members themselves need to organise. Let me offer you a few things that you might consider doing. Folk talk about cafe church, which is just a combination of sitting and eating and drinking with some spiritual activities. Could be singing, maybe not, little talks, little testimonies. Messy church, which is a combination of arts and crafts and a little bit of gospel. Cafe church, the closest thing we do, I guess, is carols and cake. Messy church, the Christmas crafts afternoon will be pretty similar to that. I mentioned tabletop sales, which is something we found quite effective in Brentwood for bringing the neighbours in, which is just one Saturday morning every month or every couple of months. You would bring in stalls from outside. People will come and spend £5 or £10 to set up a stall, which could be selling crafts, jewellery, bits and pieces. You have a good table of Christian books there. You have cards and gifts, quality second-hand goods, good quality refreshments. We invite our contacts and friends in, but it opens the door for something on the premises which members can welcome new friends, new contacts, mixing and chatting. The Good Life Cafe is something which I've wanted to do for many years. It's not been right, and it's not been easy to think of doing it in our premises, but now with the extra rooms, it becomes more practical. Good Life Cafe, just a cafe style evening in the church, serving desserts and good coffees, maybe a Thursday evening, a Friday evening, 7 till 9, with a focal point in the evening at maybe 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So something that church members can bring their neighbours and friends along to for a dessert together. But also we welcome visitors, strangers. A cafe, in that customers pay for what they eat and drink, although members who bring their friends and neighbours would probably treat their guests. Good Life Cafe, you could possibly have a health food, fair trade flavour to it. Somewhere you go, after you've had your dinner at home, you come out for a pudding, a cup of coffee, some relaxed cafe ambience, maybe some background music. It doesn't have to be an evening, could be lunch, Good Life lunch, 12 till 2. But again, within it, either the cafe or the lunch, in the middle, a focal point of some kind. And a focal point could be anything. Performance of live music, film, a DVD, a Scrabble or board game or whatever, talks or workshops or talks on, I don't know, helping children to enjoy reading, understand maths, settle into school, be creative, choose a secondary school, helping children with their homework. Something on first aid everybody should know. Maybe some sessions on helping a friend with illness or depression or redundancy, bereavement, caring for a relative. I think that's a better title than calling it How to Cope Yourself with Those Problems, but something very helpful to folk as they come along. Talks could be workshops on all sorts of things, people helping each other with the internet or email or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, digital photography, making movies, your iPad, Sudoku, how to trace your family tree, so many things, how to cook, demonstrations of different cuisines, arts, crafts, sewing, gardening, workshops, demonstrations, all kinds of things, just to welcome folk in, sometimes with a bit of spiritual contact, sometimes not. The third idea, praying for you. You may remember we had that, we have the cards already made, which we can give to neighbours, friends, or put through doors, asking folk, can we pray for you? Inviting folk to contact us with their needs for prayer. Praying for neighbours and friends will lead to us sharing Jesus with them. It doesn't replace witnessing for Christ. It's something we could do alongside our witness. You may remember we had these cards, these postcards made up to help us talk to people about Jesus, help us to share our faith in praying for you. Let me just put them on the screen. We've got boxes of these postcards waiting for us to use them when we're ready to do so. Bring it back up onto the screen again. Offering to pray for people. So there you go, a whole bundle of ideas about outreach. Let me just remind you that we need the progression of activities, different levels, making sure that folk know the church is there, and then moving from purely social events through to events for those who are inquiring about the faith, and then follow up for new Christians. And I've put before you 5 suggestions the church may want to consider in the time before you get a new minister. Don't wait until a new minister comes and organises these things. They may have other ideas, better ideas. But here are things that the church could be doing over the next couple of years. Some kind of cafe church or messy church. Tabletop sales would be very easy to arrange. Something a bit more ambitious, the Good Life Cafe. And praying for you, a way of inviting our neighbours to let us know how we can pray for them, a way for us to make contact with them, start talking to them about Jesus. Outreach 101. These are the ideas that I've presented to a number of churches. I've never articulated them in North Springfield. I don't think I've ever shared them in that form with the deacons. But there's a start. There's some ideas which might be helpful for outreach in the years ahead.